Hello everybody, it's Non-Scene News here, and today we've got lots of breaking dates today. And the first news we'll be discussing today is coming from the first Russian and US meetings that have happened in Saudi Arabia. So in the previous video we talked about how US and Russian talks have finally begun in Saudi Arabia. These were the first US and Russian talks since 3 years now. So top Russian and US officials, so the US Secretary of State met with the Russian Foreign Minister in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday to discuss bilateral relations and possible solutions for ending the war in Ukraine, and preparations for a potential summit and meeting between the US President Donald Trump and Russia's President Vladimir Putin. So let's just go over the key statements that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, said during the meeting with the Russian officials. So Marco Rubio said that working to end the conflict in Ukraine will require difficult and intense diplomacy over a long period of time. Ending the conflict in Ukraine will require concessions from all sides, both Ukraine and Russia. Ending the conflict in Ukraine is possible only with the consent of all parties. The conditions must be acceptable. Trump wants to end the conflict in Ukraine fairly and not to allow it to resume in 2 to 3 years later, and the EU must be at the negotiating table at some point as it imposed sanctions on Russia, the Secretary of State stated. And the last statement that the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio made, he stressed the need for Russia and the US to be guided by national interest, and Moscow agreed with this. So, interesting news. Now let's go over what the Russian Foreign Minister outlined. So, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov outlined the results of the Russian and US talks in Saudi Arabia. So, Sergei Lavrov stated that an agreement to ensure a swift appointment of ambassadors to enhance diplomatic relations were made, an agreement to remove obstacles that the Biden administration has created over the past 4 years, which has hindered Russian and US relations and work, has been removed, an agreement to form a progress for the Ukrainian conflict resolution, with negotiators being appointed in the near future, is being made. An agreement to create conditions for the resumption of bilateral cooperation with Russia and the United States is being talked about as well. The Russian Foreign Minister stated that we didn't just listen, we heard each other, and Russia and the United States have agreed that everything must be done to unite efforts in geopolitical spheres and economic affairs. There is a reason to believe that the American side has begun to listen to Russia's position, the Russian Foreign Minister said, and consultations between Russia and the United States on Ukraine will be regular after both sides have appointed negotiating teams. Russia and the United States have agreed that it is necessary to remove barriers to mutually benefit economic cooperation. So, big news. So that was the mainly big statements that were made on both sides. Marco Rubio said that the meeting wasn't meant to be groundbreaking, but the meeting was meant to set the foundation of peace in Ukraine and the foundation of US and Russian cooperation. And we've also got some statements by Donald Trump after the meeting of the United States and Russian delegations in Saudi Arabia. So Donald Trump called the meeting between the Russian Federation and the United States of America in the capital city of Saudi Arabia as very good, and his confidence in the settlement in Ukraine has strengthened, reports have suggested. And now, while on the topic of Donald Trump, in the previous 24 hours, Donald Trump has made a brutal post about the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. So Trump has just published a devastating post about Ukraine's leader, Zelensky. So let's just go into this post. So he posted a tweet on X, formerly known as Twitter, where he ripped into Zelensky, and he did not hold back. So let's go over this tweet here in the bottom left corner. So Donald Trump stated that Zelensky, who had modest success as a comedian, could not have won the Ukrainian conflict, but the United States gave him money. He called Zelensky a dictator without elections and accused him of refusing to hold a national vote. Donald Trump has also stated that without the participation of the United States, Zelensky will never be able to negotiate peace with Russia. He stated that Zelensky dragged the US into war that could not be won. Donald Trump also said that Zelensky played Biden by the book like a fizzle and now refuses to participate in elections due to his low ratings of 4%. And Donald Trump has also accused Zelensky of wanting to continue the conflict with Russia for financial gain. And Donald Trump has accused Zelensky of having a low percent of popularity of 4%. So very big news. So Donald Trump went full into his, some say it's an insult, some say it's the truth, into Vladimir Zelensky. But right now, reportedly, Ukraine's military is in deep shock because of the statements by President Donald Trump. And along with this, Elon Musk has also hopped on the train with Donald Trump and actually made his own opinions on Vladimir Zelensky. And he stated that everything that the president stated is true. So Elon Musk has completely gotten Donald Trump's back on this matter. And now when both the President Donald Trump and Elon Musk took an openly anti-Ukrainian position, the Ukrainian army is now fearing that Starlink connection can be turned off without prior notice at any moment. So the Ukrainian military relies heavily on the Starlink services that Elon Musk provides to Ukraine, and for an extremely broad range of tasks, including obviously just fighting the Russians on the battlefield. And now the Ukrainian military is in deep shock and now fearing that this actually might be the final blow, and that Elon Musk actually might be turning off Starlink connection to Ukraine. So very big news. And while all of this is happening, Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, has just arrived in Turkey, where he held meetings with the president of Turkey, Erdogan. So Zelensky stated that we don't feel support from the US today, and we know they, the United States and other EU states, don't want us to join NATO, and this is a desire of Russia. The president of Turkey stated that Turkey supports the full territorial integrity of Ukraine, and it is an ideal venue for Putin and Zelensky talks, the president of Turkey says. So interesting news. And the next news today is coming from Russia. We've got news that the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated that Putin and Trump talks could take place before the end of February, so this month, but this could also take place later, according to Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman. So we could potentially expect a Putin and Trump meeting at the end of the month. We've also got news that the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov also said that Putin is ready to negotiate with Zelensky, but his legitimacy is in question. We've also got news today coming from Russia that Coca-Cola, the soft drink, plans to return to Russia and restart production and its former plants, Russian media are now reporting. The company is allegedly already discussing strategic for re-entering the market of the Russian Federation and competing with local Russian brands. And according to Kirill Dmitriev, which is the head of the Directive Investment Funds of Russia, he stated that Western American businesses have lost over $300 billion by exiting Russia's market, and this even includes Coca-Cola and just Western brands. So interesting news. And the next news we'll be discussing today is coming from Ukraine. So we've got news today that the UK could send up to 10,000 troops to Ukraine. However, sending peacekeepers to Ukraine would make Great Britain vulnerable to attacks, British officials believe. So the UK has 71,300 military personnel in its army, and by the way, this is the lowest number in the British army in the last 200 years. But however, the UK is posing that it could send at least 10,000 troops to Ukraine. But however, British military officials are stating that this would leave Britain very vulnerable. And we've also just got news today that Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, will be presenting Donald Trump to a peace ceasefire plan to send fewer than 30,000 European troops to Ukraine and involve no American troops. So the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will urge Donald Trump to have US jets and missiles on standby in Eastern Europe to respond with if Russia breaks the terms of the peace agreement with Ukraine. But European forces will be deployed to Ukrainian cities according to Keir Starmer's peace agreement plan. And these European troops will be deployed to Ukrainian cities, ports, and other critical infrastructure sites, such as nuclear power stations, but not on the front lines. So Keir Starmer, according to The Telegraph, the news agency, will be presenting this peace agreement, this peace treaty deal to Donald Trump in the near future, according to The Telegraph. So I'll keep you updated on that. So interesting news. We've also just got news today that Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, has just arrived in Kiev in Ukraine, where he's projected to meet with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. And we've also gotten some news that Zelensky is wanting to actually bring the US official to the front. So he wants Keith Kellogg to actually visit the front. So because he has a former military background, and we'll just have to see what happens here and if he takes this I guess opportunity, you could say. We've also gotten some news today that EU representatives have just agreed on a 16th sanctions package against Russia, including a ban on primarily aluminium imports. So here is what is in the sanction package. So we've got news that the 16th sanction package on Russia includes a ban on primarily aluminium imports from Russia, sanctioning against 48 individuals and 35 companies, and disconnecting of 10 banks from the SWIFT system, an S-ban on transactions with several airports and ports in Russia, restrictions on 73 Russian oil tankers, and Russian media outlets banned in the EU. So very big news. And I remember Zelensky stating at the Munich conference that this could seriously hinder Russia's ability to fund the war. So the main point is a ban on Russian aluminium imports. So very, very, very big news. The next news we've gotten today is that Lithuania has delivered a new military aid package to Ukraine worth $80 million. The country's Ministry of Defense, the Lithuanian Ministry of Defense, said that it includes trucks, thermal imaging sites, and other essential equipment for Ukrainian soldiers on the front line. The next news we've gotten today is coming from Denmark. We've got news that Denmark is to allocate an additional $7 billion for defense spending in 2025 to 2026. A lot of sources are stating that this is because of Donald Trump's latest accusations that Greenland should be a part of the United States, or it should be independent. So Denmark is allocating additional $7 billion to its military. We've gotten some news coming from France today, that France is facing the threat of deindustrialization. So last year, more factories closed than opened in France. So a situation has not been seen in France since 2015, Le Monde writes, the news agency. So the author of the publication notes that in December 2024, the level of our industrial production was 8% lower than pre-pandemic January 2020. So if we can see this graph here, we can see Germany all the way down, and Italy seems to be going down too, along with the European area, and France seems to be taking quite a bit of a dip. But unlike Spain, Spain is actually getting higher in industrial production. So very interesting news. We've also got some statements coming from the president of France, Macron. Macron stated that France will take full responsibility for peace and security in Europe. He said that I am a guarantor. We support Ukraine. And the next news we'll be discussing today is coming from the Vatican City. We've got news that the Pope is allegedly dying, and he has developed pneumonia in both of his lungs. So pneumonia is where obviously your lungs fill up with blood and pus, causing most people to die, especially in both of the lungs. So we've got news that reportedly Pope Francis, the Pope, told his inner circle that he doesn't feel like he will live much longer in his current sickness state. And we've also got news that countries like Switzerland, Italy, and the Vatican City are now rehearsing the Pope's funeral, which is not a very good sign to see. So, interesting news. We've also got some news today. We talked previously about this in yesterday's video, how Israel plans to actually stay in Lebanon. So despite a planned pullout, an Israeli official says that the IDF will remain in 5 strategic positions inside Lebanon. So if you can see here, I've actually highlighted here on the map and here in your bottom left corner. So these are the 5 strategic points that Israel will be not pulling out into Lebanon. So interesting news. And the next news we've got today is coming from the Israeli army in Syria. So we've got news that the Israeli army has just established at least seven military bases in southern Syria. So in this zone here, which I am making it blink. So when the HDS rebels took in charge of Syria and ousted Bashar al-Assad, Israel started its buffer zone operation, where it's managed to capture something like this. And the Israeli army is now building several military bases within this Israeli buffer zone region, and it comes there's one in Mount Hermon, there's a couple in the middle, and the couple near the Jordan and Syrian Israeli border here. So very interesting news. And the next news we've got today is coming from Hamas and Israel. We've got news that Hamas has just announced that it's now ready to free all remaining Israeli hostages at once in the second phase of the ceasefire deal. So this is according to a senior Hamas official that reported to the AFP news agency. So in exchange, Hamas wants the release of all Palestinian prisoners and detainees from Israeli prisons, but let it be known, Hamas still hasn't revealed the exact number of Israeli captives, whether dead or alive. So Hamas is now announcing that it is now ready to free all remaining Israeli hostages at once. And we've also just got news today that Hamas has just handed over the bodies of 4 Israeli deceased captives to the Red Cross. They'll be taken for identification in Israel following the short ceremony. So the bodies of deceased Israeli captives have just been carried away in the Red Cross vehicles, making their way to the Israeli Defense Forces. So Hamas has just released 4 Israeli deceased bodies, hostages, to the Red Cross for identification. So very sad news coming from Israel and Gaza as well. And we've also gotten some breaking news today coming from Sudan. So we've gotten some news coming from the Rapid Support Forces, so the RSF military group in Sudan, which controls a huge block of Sudan that is fighting the national army of Sudan. So Sudan is currently in a civil war right now, where the RSF forces are fighting against the Sudanese armed forces and its allies. So the Sudanese armed forces and its allies are highlighted in the red, while the RSF military group is highlighted in the pink. So we've just got news today that the Rapid Support Forces, which is the ones in the pink, have just announced plans to form a separatist government in Sudan. So the RSF deputy leader, so the leader of this group here, has just attended a session in the Kenyan capital city of Nairobi, where the plan was announced. So Sudan has just commended Kenya for hosting the RSF leader in the capital city of Kenya, describing it as a hostile act, and warned of taking action in the situation. So we've got news that the Rapid Support Forces have announced plans to form its own separatist government in Sudan. So big news. And these Rapid Support Forces have actually seized the capital city of Sudan. So the National Sudanese Army doesn't actually have control of the capital city. It was taken by the RSF forces, but I'll keep you updated on that. So we could potentially see a separatist government in Sudan. And we've also gotten some breaking updates today coming from Uganda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So we've just got news today that Uganda's armed forces have allegedly crossed into the territory of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So we've got news that Uganda's armed forces are now moving into the Democratic Republic of the Congo's territory. So we need to wait for more news about this. It's still a little bit shady, but apparently, if you can see here in your bottom left corner, we can allegedly see the first videos of Uganda's armed forces moving into the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And we've got news that Uganda is now doing its offensive to the major Congolese city of Burundia here. So the Ugandan armed forces are apparently now sending its troops to this city. So very interesting news. So we just have to wait until further news comes out about this. So very interesting news. So we've got reports that Uganda has might have just crossed the border into the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And the next news is coming from China today. We've got news that China's 6th generation fighter jet has reportedly made its second flight through China. So we talked about how China has allegedly created this new 6th generation fighter jet called the J-36. And we've just gotten pictures today, reportedly making its second flight. So, interesting news. And we've also gotten some pretty concerning news coming from the South China Sea today. So we've got news that there's been another airborne incident in the South China Sea, this time between China and the Philippines. So a Chinese helicopter came as close as 3 meters, so that's about 10 feet, to a Philippines maritime plane on Tuesday morning, February the 18th, the Philippines claim. So, the Philippines say that their aircraft was on a maritime domain awareness flight and accused the Chinese Navy of performing dangerous flight maneuvers. The Chinese command says the aircraft was illegally intruding into Chinese airspace and accusing the Philippines of spreading false narratives. And the next news we've got today is coming from South Korea. So we've got news today that a new stage of armed deliveries from North Korea to Russia is expected to happen by the end of March 2025. So this is according to the South Korean news agency and military intelligence. So South Korea says that hundreds of thousands of 122mm and 152mm shells and hundreds of ballistic missiles are going to be delivered to Russia by North Korea. This delivery also apparently includes hundreds of short-range ballistic missiles, including tactical guided missiles, so the KN-23, and the super large multiple rocket systems called the K-24. So we've got news that South Korea is allegedly stating that there's going to be a huge military package from North Korea to Russia that's going to be happening in March. So I'll keep you updated on that. We've also got some news today coming from Australia. That a new Australian survey shows that 80% of its citizens want immigration cut, and the majority say that it says that there is enough diversity in Australia, and their views aren't being heard. And the last news we've got today is coming from America. We've got news that the United States has just tested an unarmed Minute 3 intercontinental ballistic missile. So the Minute 3 test launch showcases the readiness of the US nuclear forces and the safe, effective deterrent narrative. So the US has just approved a Minuteman 3 intercontinental ballistic missile test at the Vandenberg Space Force Base, which obviously it was completely unarmed. It had nothing in it. It was just the intercontinental ballistic missile itself, which launched to test and showcase the readiness of the US nuclear forces. And the last news we'll be discussing today is coming from some space news. So we've got some news coming from NASA today that the Asteroid 2024 Y YR4 now has a 2.6% chance of impacting Earth. So scientists in NASA have revealed that there's an asteroid called YR4 that has a 2.6% chance of impacting Earth in 2032, according to the new analysts from NASA, up from 22.2% in their last assessment. So 2024 YR4 asteroid was discovered in late December and is estimated to be between 130 to 300 feet, 40 to 90 meters in diameter, so according to the International Center. So as of Monday, NASA estimates that a 2.6% chance of the asteroid impacting Earth in 2032. So the equivalent to odds is 1 in 38 chance. And we've just got news that NASA's estimate impact zone of 2.6% chance has just been raised to 3.2% in a week. So the impact risk of the YR4 2024 asteroid has a 3.2% chance of hitting Earth, and the asteroid is projected to hit Bangladesh and the Myanmar or Burma region. So, interesting news. And that's all the news I actually have for you today. I'm non-scene news. I'll try and provide you news that medias around the world do not show you. I do these videos hopefully daily, so consider subscribing and liking. And if you want to actually support me personally, as you know, I don't get the most views on YouTube. I get little to no revenues from YouTube. So if you want to help the channel, consider donating through the PayPal link in the description below, or becoming a member of the YouTube channel. And thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Bye.